All right. It's Dren, and I'm back with part 2 of that whole FMOD interactive music business that I started last week. So here's the rest of what I was blathering on about. This one gets a little trickier. This is the first venue in the game. It looks complicated, but I'll explain what all these things are. Again, I mentioned that the parameters were the same for every one of these venues. Like if I look at venue 11, go here, you're going to see basically all of these same things. It's all kind of the same across the board. And then the numbers that are in all of these parameters, they don't change from one venue to the next unless there's something really special. So the weird thing about this is the start isn't here at gameplay. You'd think that bar 1 over here would be the start. That's not the start. The start is here. This is pregame. You can see that the parameters are set between 0 and 0.10. That might sound like arbitrary numbers, and they kind of are, but it'll make sense. To 0, so like it's changing here. Oh no, screen state is the one we want. If that's moving around, you can see it move around down here. If it moves past 0.10, it's not going to play the pregame. But if it's at 0, which it is, as soon as this defaults to this music event, which is what we want, it will play the pregame music. So let's hear that. So this is a screen where you're getting information about the next level and some explanation about what's happening in the next level, where you're at in the game, that kind of thing. So there's no action here, you're just reading. You might be updating some of your special power-ups, things of that nature here. So the next section of the game, the way it's designed, it goes to the round introduction, which is right here. You see I've got that highlighted, round intro. And you can see down here, round intro triggers between 0.26 and 0.30. All right, and that's in screen state. I'm just gonna lower this so you can see what all the other options are. Because we can go from this cue to gameplay immediately, to round intro, to win music, or to lose music. Wow. So these are transition regions, and the 1/8 means that's an 8th note. It's going to transition on 8th notes. So if you make this change to 0.26 to 0.30, the next 8th note will send this on to the next thing, which is round intro. That's this flag. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go over here to screen state. Now I can enter these manually. So I'm going to do that. Like 2-7. Let me hit enter, and that should jump. There it is. So what you're seeing now, I'm going to open this up a little bit so you can see. So it triggered our game. Here was what we heard. Actually, I'm going to do it again so you can see. So you can see this fades out. And now we've just got this little loop playing. And so that's cool because I think the player has an opportunity to make a couple decisions. So we're waiting on the player's input here. That's why we have this little loop playing. So it doesn't feel dead. So it kind of even gives a sense to the player that we're waiting on you. Here's like a little metronome kind of drum beat, waiting on you to make this decision. Oh, I've got a button to push. Click. When they click that button, that goes to here. So let's look at that. Screen state between 0.20 and 0.25 will take us to gameplay, to this tag over here. And you can see that I've got different little tempos set up through this, and these are all tempo tags. The tempo tags are handy because when I drag in a piece of audio, it will snap to the bars, so I can make sure that something is snapping to the bars correctly and is in the right time signature and in the right tempo. So we're going to do that. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to hit 0.22. And now we're into the gameplay music. Now, let me move this out of the way again. We're hearing this gameplay. I guess I did 4 versions of it. This is V4. And so we're just hearing this. This is playing. There are various sound effects playing over this during the game. Blah, blah, blah. This has, again, 3 other possibilities of places it can go to. All right, lose music, pre-game music, win music, or double time music. In almost every case of this particular game, the gameplay amps up at a certain point. You get a lot more customers you have to deal with, a lot more time stuff you have to have, time management stuff that you have to figure out. So whenever you reach that threshold, the double time music kicks in, lets the player know, holy cow, now we're in the thick of it. So that means we're going to jump way over here to the double time music. And you'll see there's a little, here's our tag, right? And here's a stinger. So there's a little stinger. Then we start that double time music. And then double time music keeps looping. You'll see over here without the stinger. If we had that stinger in every time, repetitive tolerance would be shot. So we don't want to have that stinger every time. We want that to be a special thing that only happens once when you get into double time. Then we're into the double time loop, just looping. So let's check that out. Let's see what our parameter is here. Open this up again. Here we go. 0.51 to 0.55. All right, 0.52. Here we go to double time. All right, that was our stinger. And now we're in the second half of the loop. Well, it's basically the same loop, but the second half of this event mark. So now we're just hearing that loop play over and over again. Generally, this is pretty short because the intense part of this level doesn't last for very long. So I think it's designed to maybe play 3 or 4 times at the most. So the player doesn't have to hear this loop a lot. You hear my little Ray Manzarek lick there on the Fender Rhodes. So then we're going to go to either win, lose, or pregame music. So let's assume we won. Okay, let's see what that parameter is. Looks like 0.30 to 0.40. And all I did was click on this transition region to tell me that. So let's go ahead and make that change. We won. Okay, so something else now that we finally got this one. Very similar thing as we had in the double time. We've got a stinger, and then we've got this kind of lower energy but happy loop playing. You don't want the energy to be really big for that whole time because there's all these fireworks and congratulations and things going on, sound effects, and then you have to go through and make some decisions as a player on what you want to do next. So we had to bring the music level down after that big stinger that just is a big celebration, exclamation of what the player just did, and now we got to bring down the music. So we have a couple places we can go out of the win music. We can go to the pregame, to the round intro, or to the gameplay. 9 times out of 10, we're going to go to the round intro for the next round. They probably just want to play another round. So if we look back at our parameters, round intro, between 0.26 and 0.30. Let's see if I can make this happen. Oh, I think I can just reverse it back. There we go. Round intro. Now let's go to gameplay. Bring that back on here. And let's pretend that we just lost before we even got into the double time. So that's going to be between 0.41 and 0.50. So 0.42. So that's our little loser stinger. And now you get the very low energy you just lost loop. It's always a challenge to make these things not be too sad and not make it sound like the player's a complete loser. So you got to be careful with the tone of these because you still want the player to play. You don't want them to feel bad, right? So that is basically, in a nutshell, as much as that can be in a nutshell, that's how we designed the music for a level. I would call this kind of setup a transition music event. or crossing the streams. You're crossing from one cue to the next. You're jumping into stingers, you're jumping into loops, kind of jumping all around. It's just jumping all the way through this timeline. So the confusing thing for people who are used to working in a DAW where everything is left to right linear, this just jumps around. FMOD doesn't care what parameter you give to it. That's just going to see it as a place in the timeline to jump to. It doesn't have to go left to right. As you can see, I started at bar 37 in the middle here, jumped back to 1, then jumped over to 114. So it's just, your playhead's jumping all over the place. So if we're going to mix this up a little bit more, we're introducing some ways to extend our music, make it more interesting, and also to randomize it a little bit. So we'll go over that. This is the second venue, which takes place in a hotel lobby, and the band was supposed to be a jazz combo. So let's just hear the pre-game music. These are live musicians that we recorded, 25th Street, Oakland. Great studio. Hey guys. Hey Casey Cameron on the piano. They've got a really nice Steinway in there. Anyway, this is the pre-game music. And you can see I've got something that looks a little different than what we saw in the last session. In the last event, really, I should say. So I can scroll up to this so you can see a little bit of it here. I can even make this one go away. So if I click on multi-instrument here, it's kind of a weird term, right? Multi-instrument, maybe it should be multi-cue or multi-tracks or something. Multi-instrument seems a little bit of a weird name to give it. But if I click on that, you can see these songs here. And you can see my playlist. Right now, this one is set to be sequential and local. Local scope, which just means it goes A, B, C, back to A. So each one of these kind of features some different instruments, as if the jazz band is soloing. The nice thing about it is every time the user comes back to the pre-game state, they might hear a different version, whether A, B, or C. They won't always hear the first one. It'll play wherever it left off before, I think. You could change that and make it randomize, and I'll show you another one that does that, which I think is possibly the next cue. So here's another weird thing about FMOD. You may not know that your Logic's tracks are here. There's nothing to indicate that they're there except for this turns to the double arrow, then you pull down. So that's something to look for if you're working in FMOD and you're like, where did that go? Okay, so round intro. Let's go to that. Let's go back up and we should see the same parameters as the last music event, right? Okay, so that's going to be 0.27. And now we've got our little round intro. And if I go here, so we've got the bongos this time instead of the drum beat. I can just scroll down to same between 0.20 and 0.25, same as the last. Hey, now we're in our gameplay. And then we're going to go to our, if I remember right, so 0.52. I'm just going to check to see. Oh, looks like we have an alternate of the gameplay music. 2 alternates. And I can't remember how that works. I think it's this rad. I think it's the rad parameter. But we did create some other alternatives to the main game loop for an extended kind of extra layer or extra level state. When the player had got through enough levels, there were bonus levels, and that had some different music to it. Anyway, let's just get to the double time because that's fun, right? So I think this is 0.50. Let's see if I remember right. I'll do like 0.52. 0.52. I remember. There's our stinger. Now we've got our loop. Now we've got a multi-instrumental thing. And this is cool. So we've got this loop once. Just push this up so you can see. Now every time it loops, it's going to play a different version of this. We got one of the trumpet solo, one of the sax solo, and one that's just the regular double time. And those are in shuffle. So there's a 33 1/3 chance that each one will play. I think each one has an equal chance of being played rather than randomized. I didn't want to do random for this because I didn't want to have the trumpet solo play after the trumpet solo, because that could happen if you have it set to randomize. So it'll go to one of the other two choices, but it won't play the same one again, I think. So that's another way to change it up. So it's kind of like crossing the streams with some randomization or some kind of other alternative way to make this make the music less repetitive. Because it's a jazz venue, the music in this venue, in this level, I should say, we got in the habit of calling them venues. But because the music in this level is jazz, it seemed important to have something that followed the genre so that it wouldn't be real loopy and felt like, well, obviously we had to get jazz players for that, but we also had to introduce some new ideas into this level to get it to feel a little bit more like jazz. So let's hear the wind music, because I think that one was fun. 0.31. Yeah. Keith's piano playing on this is so nice. Anyhow, you get the sense of how this happened. All right, so there you have it. There's some interactive music in FMOD for a mobile game. We did this in 2019. We were developing this back in 2016, 2017. These ideas are not new. So I'm not saying it as if like this is this brand new thing that everyone should start doing. It's a really old thing that everybody should be doing if you're making game music in games. Everything should be reactive to what's happening in the interactive experience. It's supposed to be interactive. In our lives, we don't hear the same music looping constantly in our eardrums. We shouldn't hear that in a game. One of these games I was playing for the awards was a big moment with like these giant, I won't say what they were, giant things falling over and destruction everywhere. And the music is just kind of happily playing along, not reacting to this momentous scene where everything for the characters is changing. And I was shocked because it was a pretty high budget game. And it wasn't deep into the game. I know you get deep into a game development and some of those things fall on the wayside, but this is kind of early in the game and usually you try and hit those moments. And anyway, I was surprised. I would like to see more interactive music in games. That's where this tech belongs, and there are some great examples of it. There are great examples of this from 10 years ago, from 12 years ago. It's a lovely thing when the interactivity of the music works with the game and the game design and the story, and it's just magical. You have this opportunity, so I encourage you to grab it. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for watching. Again, you know, if you want to like or subscribe or make my mom proud doing that, you have that opportunity to do that too. Thanks. All right.